Tonight, money matters. Trump's trade war triggers fears of another dizzying week of stock market swings. The temporary tariff exemption that's signaling another shift.
Where we land between now and the end of the week, nobody knows.
More confusion to the already chaotic rollout. Also, participation matters.
If you want to see change, then you have to be willing to making the move for the change.
What leaders in northern communities are doing to rally voters.
Their vote would ultimately affect their First Nations.
And Canada's brain gain, how the country is rolling out the welcome mat to recruit top-tier talent from the U.S.
Physicians from the U.S. are feeling frustrated, so they see Canada as an opportunity.
Plus, encouraging advice for your next patriotic purchase.
I think we should focus more on the positive, which is pro-community.
Why some business owners want you to think twice before boycotting American products.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Signs tonight we may be in for another volatile week on the markets. Investors bracing for more uncertainty with mixed messages from the Trump administration over exemptions from punishing tariffs. CTV's Jeremy Sharon on the White House whiplash and why it could be another chaotic week.
A first indication tonight of what investors expect on the heels of a whirlwind week on Wall Street. Stock futures rose Sunday as traders weigh temporary tariff exemptions on some tech products from China.
Markets are looking like they're taking that positively, and they've started the route, on an upswing here to start us off on the week. Where we land between now and the end of the week, nobody knows.
This after bonds had their worst performance in decades last week, but then the Dow posted its biggest gain ever, bouncing back from steep losses early in the week. On the news, Donald Trump was pausing reciprocal tariffs.
I think you'll see continued unease. A lot of players here, from business people to political leaders, are saying, look, give us tariffs, but fix them at a base rate, and let's get on with things.
But so far, unpredictability has been the only constant, and there is no indication that will change. As Donald Trump today insisted what he's done so far is working.
We've been making $2 and $3 billion a day the last couple of weeks. We didn't make that ever. And we're making a lot of money. And then to be nice, I lowered the tariffs on everybody.
While his Secretary of Commerce said today recent exemptions to tariffs for a range of electronics could actually be part of a separate set of tariffs that could be rolled out in the coming weeks.
All those products are going to come under semiconductors, and they're going to have a special focused type of tariff to make sure that those products get reshored.
Reshoring American manufacturing and resetting global trade has been Trump's clear goal, but a global trade war has so far, as last week showed us, led to significant market uncertainty.
On the precipice of another financial crash is where we ended up.
But where we're heading is the big question. And if the markets tell us anything, it's that even they can't predict Donald Trump's fast-changing trade policies and the damage they might do. Heather?
Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. To the election now, where the Conservatives and the Bloc are again accusing the Liberal leader of hiding. This as Pierre Poilievre unveiled a suite of proposed accountability policies, many of which take aim at Mark Carney. CTV's Colton Prale kicks off our campaign coverage tonight.
It's been a consistent attack.
Mr. Carney refuses to tell Canadians what investments he continues to own or even where he pays his taxes.
Throughout the campaign, the Conservatives have questioned Mark Carney's potential conflicts of interests as a result of investments he still holds with his former company, Brookfield Asset Management. And they're not alone in asking.
Because those questions are absolutely legitimate, and it's good for Canadians as it is good for Quebecers to have the man come clean.
Carney has repeatedly said he followed ethics rules and will shield himself from any future possible conflicts of interest. In a statement today, a Liberal Party spokesperson says Mark Carney pays income taxes in Canada. Still, Pierre Poilievre is mirroring his attacks in his latest policy pitch, calling for increased accountability standards, including for political advisors, and more tax transparency for those seeking political office.
We're going to put Canadians first for a change. We're going to have an accountable government for a change.
But ethics experts say the policies are more bark than bite.
The Conservatives' news release says selling investments is the only way to prevent conflicts of interest, but they don't propose to require politicians to sell their investments. Conflicting, confused, and not clear, effective proposals.
Ethics experts say there do need to be tighter rules, but that they need to apply to all parliamentarians and government officials, not just those in the ruling party. Heather.
Thank you, Colton. The Liberal leader is defending his French language skills and putting them on display as he pitches himself to voters in Quebec. That's where we find CTV's Mike Lecouture. A lot of focus in that region in the coming days, Mike.
Well, Heather, earlier in the campaign when Mark Carney was asked to rate his own abilities in French, he gave himself a 6 out of 10. That assessment will be tested this week as the Liberal leader is expected to spend a lot of time in Quebec, a place the Liberals feel that they can make some gains in this election. The first test was a stop on the highly rated talk show Tout le monde en parle. With pointed interview questions, it can expose a federal leader or help give them a boost. His campaign says they've shown his fun dad side in English ads in different venues, and they hope it'll come through in French. Then on Wednesday, there's the French language leaders debate. Carney did stumble a few times in the French Liberal leadership debate, having to be corrected by Chrystia Freeland when he mistakenly said he was in agreement with Hamas. He's not going to have anyone helping him on this debate stage when he faces off against the likes of other seasoned party leaders like Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Carney's team knows it'll be a challenge, and they also know that the Bloc Québécois is their biggest challenger in this province. Quebec is key to the Liberals forming any government, especially a majority. In 2015, Justin Trudeau won 40 seats in this province, and some Liberal sources believe they can surpass that total in this election. Heather?
All right, thank you, Mike. Meanwhile, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh wrapped up his trip to Northern Ontario with a focus on Indigenous communities. It comes as people in the region fight for representation on Parliament Hill. CTV's Abigail Beeman has that part of our coverage.
Jagmeet Singh launched a platform for Northern Ontario, promising more doctors from and for the area, changes to the Nutrition North food program, and better roads.
People in the North often feel like, we don't matter because people don't give us that attention. That's wrong. The North matters. And New Democrats have always shown that we are strong voices for the North.
But the 2 MPs the NDP has in the region, both long-serving, are not running again. Add another challenge, changes to riding borders.
It's very unfortunate that we lost a seat in Northern Ontario.
Carol Hughes' riding is no more, swallowed up by 3 around it.
It was not the best case scenario, but it could have been worse.
This political science professor says while there is less Northern Ontario representation overall, making sure Indigenous communities and Franco-Ontarians are well represented played a big role in the restructuring.
Normally, when we talk about gerrymandering, it's a negative thing. It's actually something to marginalize communities, often used to marginalize Black communities in the United States. Here, it's kind of positive gerrymandering, as I've said, in that the ridings were drawn or redrawn in a way that would better represent Indigenous voices.
We were trying to propose these First Nations actually have a pre-existing relationship, and so they should be in the same riding. Some of that is successful and some of it isn't.
Laura Mayer is an Indigenous candidate with the NDP and made submissions about the changes.
Having as many of those kind of voices in Parliament is really important for representation.
In the last Parliament, there were 10 MPs of Indigenous origins, according to the Library of Parliament. That represents about 3% of seats, but Indigenous people make up 5% of Canada's population. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Timmins, Ontario.
We'll take a closer look at the Indigenous vote and the weight it carries in this election. That story from Churchill, Manitoba, a little later in our newscast. The French and English language debates will be a big focus for the party leaders this week. Joining us now for more insight is CTV's chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. Vashi, what are you expecting to see at the debates and what's at stake?
Hi, Heather. This is going to be a really significant week in the campaign, particularly because of those debates and the fact that the debates happen just as Canadians head into a long weekend. Even if you're not celebrating Easter, the fact that you're going to be with your family, with your friends, and have ample opportunity to discuss the campaign thus far and whatever happens in the debates makes them, I think, all the more significant. They are particularly significant for the two leaders of the parties that are likely to form government, according to public opinion polling, Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. And each of them have a different set of vulnerabilities heading into this debate. Pierre Poilievre is an incredibly seasoned debater, particularly for 2 decades in the House of Commons. Mark Carney has not been in the House of Commons ever, and they are kind of matched in that way, and I think viewed by Canadians as far as expectations and a whole host of other things goes. I think also Mark Carney, it's shown that he does not like to be pushed, for example, by reporters. Pierre Poilievre has, and you can see this through other public opinion polling, definitely some vulnerabilities when it comes to the tone and tenor that he's using. So all of that will factor into these debates and the way in which Canadians consume them. And then ultimately, after Easter, you're off to the races. You've got a week to go until you vote. And so the debates could likely solidify opinions for Canadians across this country. Heather?
The countdown is on. Vashi, thank you. Dramatic images out of Alberta of a confirmed tornado that touched down south of the city of Brooks. The landspout tornado formed near Lake Newell, Alberta, Saturday. Environment Canada has given the twister a preliminary rating of EF0. That's the lowest on the scale, with wind speeds between 105 and 137 kilometers an hour. Many federal workers in the U.S. are looking for jobs after the Trump administration slashed thousands of positions. Now some are eyeing Canada. Faced with a physician shortage, it could be an opportunity for this country to benefit from a brain gain. But as CTV's Kamal Karmali explains, the move may not be so easy.
Chaos erupting at several U.S. health agencies earlier this month, when thousands of federal workers from top management positions to physicians received layoff notices. While some Americans are pushing back against the cuts,
we really need family physicians.
On this side of the border, others are looking to pull in former employees.
Physicians from the U.S. are feeling frustrated. They see the research funding disappear. They're seeing politicians interfere. And so they see Canada as an opportunity.
What's being dubbed in the U.S. as the brain drain could now be Canada's brain gain.
We're seeing more interest from U.S. physicians coming to Canada than we've seen in decades.
The Medical Council of Canada has seen a nearly 600% increase in U.S. medical graduates exploring options to practice in Canada. And several provinces have taken steps to create a pathway for U.S. doctors to practice, including Manitoba, where right now there's roughly 1 physician for every 456 people, the second lowest in the country.
We hope to recruit more. This is an important time in this period of kind of instability.
But it isn't just the health sector. Companies across Canada are also hoping to recruit scientists and researchers looking to leave the U.S.
Some of the country's leading biomedical research institutions certainly have received an enormous amount of requests.
The Canadian Medical Association is now asking Ottawa to help create an easier pathway for U.S. doctors to practice in Canada that would include fast-tracking visas and removing other immigration barriers. Heather.
Kamal, thank you. Coming up after the break.
I think there's a lot on the table now.
Voters in northern Manitoba share their view of the election campaign, plus playing his way to an epic career Grand Slam. In Ukraine today, dozens of people have been killed after 2 Russian missiles hit the northern city of Sumy in the deadliest attack of the conflict so far this year. Officials say at least 34 people have died and more than 100 were wounded. The attack came as people were heading to church for Palm Sunday. The deadly attack prompted condemnation from Ukraine, U.S. and European government officials.
Una settimana santa.
Pope Francis surprised the crowds at the end of Palm Sunday Mass in St. Peter's Square. The pontiff, still recovering from double pneumonia, was in a wheelchair but without supplemental oxygen, a major change from his appearance last week. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro sharing the frightening news that someone set fire to his home overnight while he and his family slept upstairs. A 38-year-old man is now under arrest and facing charges of attempted murder, terrorism, and arson. As Canada increases its focus on Arctic security and resources, the country's northern communities will have a pivotal role to play. But while the region's importance grows, voter turnout has shrunk. CTV's Alex Karpa is in Churchill, Manitoba, to see what's behind the cycle of apathy, frustration, and neglect.
It may look like a cold and desolate place, but Churchill in northern Manitoba is a strategic port town. The community of around 800 people is unique, home to the only deep-water seaport in northern Canada that is connected to land by the rest of the country. But the region where Churchill is situated has had a history of low voter turnout during election time. Some are hoping to see better results this year.
I think there's a lot on the table now, and not just in terms of the national picture, but the regional picture as well.
If you want to see change, then you have to be willing to be making the move for the change.
But others in the community don't share the same sentiment.
The promises that have been made in the past that I think are really important that haven't been kept, that doesn't really matter to my vote.
The view of broken promises is something that resonates with others across Churchill's Indigenous community as well. Some residents I spoke to here say they feel neglected and forgotten about, whether it's improving the high cost of living or the lack of action on the town's port and rail.
We don't see much changes in this area as much as we want. Like, there could be a whole lot more than there is now.
Generally, I just feel that people are sort of fed up and they just feel that it's not going to make any difference.
The riding of Churchill-Kiiwetinoong-Aski in northern Manitoba is the largest riding in the province, but it has less than 48,000 registered voters. In 2021, this riding only had a 36% voter turnout, well below the national average.
The importance of getting out and voting is pretty critical to, building your community, building the region.
Every province and territory saw a decrease in Indigenous voter turnout in 2021. The largest decreases were in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan.
Their vote will ultimately affect their First Nations. It'll affect their communities, it'll affect their families.
Manitoba Southern Chiefs Organization has launched a campaign called Rock the Vote, encouraging Indigenous people in Manitoba and across the country to cast their ballot ahead of the federal election. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Churchill, Manitoba.
Still ahead, out of business and out of options. How a small town closure is creating big problems in central Alberta. Golfer Rory McIlroy has finally completed his career Grand Slam.
The long journey is over. McIlroy has his masterpiece.
The 35-year-old from Northern Ireland beat Justin Rose on the first playoff hole to earn his first Masters title. He has now won all 4 major golf championships to become the first European man to claim the career Grand Slam. Corey Connors of Listowel, Ontario, tied for 8th. To Alberta now, where a small town has lost its only grocery store. The population, largely comprised of seniors, now have to travel to neighboring communities to get food. CTV's Kathy Lee now with the challenges many in rural areas are facing.
In the small town of Bowden, Alberta, this grocery store is now a hollow shell.
It's been like a ghost town.
A contrast to the vibrant gathering spot it once was not long ago.
The school kids used to go down there at noon and get stuff to eat.
People in town relied on the former Ready Mart for groceries. It was the only one here and operated for decades. But after the building owners didn't renew the lease and couldn't find a buyer, the doors were shuttered. Now, for people in Bowden who want to get groceries, they have to hop on this major highway and drive 15 minutes to the next community. It's a challenge for many seniors here.
I'm vision impaired and I can't see properly to drive.
Wendy Thompson relies on friends for help, but even for others who can drive, it's not ideal.
I'm driving back and forth about 2 to 3 times a week, and that's about a 40 kilometer drive there and back. It's very expensive driving back and forth.
The town says a shuttle bus was canceled due to lack of demand, and other affordable transportation options aren't available.
There is a taxi, which is very expensive, but there isn't any way of having groceries delivered to this town.
Multiple attempts to get another company to open a grocery store have failed.
They did the market analysis and just said it would be too much of an investment on the return that they would get.
Which means people here have to keep traveling elsewhere.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
To get their necessities. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Bowden, Alberta.
Still ahead, a new view of the Buy Canadian movement. Why pivoting to only Canadian products could do more harm than good. A small business owner in BC is asking Canadians to think twice before boycotting American products. She says we could unintentionally be hurting the very people we're trying to support. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on another way to help small local stores and be patriotic too.
So on our shelf right now, we've got Cut Above. They come out of Texas.
Booze-free beverages from both sides of the border fill Raquel Foran's Port Coquitlam shop. She says when the trade war began, business dried up.
I think Canadians absolutely went into shock.
It has since picked up, but Foran says customers trying to shop local but avoiding the American products they sell are actually hurting small businesses like hers.
The fact of the matter is, if there's any product sitting on a shelf in a store in Canada right now, that product's been bought and paid for and there were no tariffs put on it.
Leaving small businesses and their suppliers stuck with dead inventory no one wants. She disagrees with the approach taken by multiple provinces to pull U.S. booze from the shelves.
Instead of focusing on the negative, which is boycott America and being sort of anti-U.S. president, et cetera, I think we should focus more on the positive, which is pro-community.
A shift in mindset also encouraged by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which has seen some locally owned franchises of American chains punished.
Shop local, go to a local store, a physical location that's in your community, because you know that the money you spend is actually going towards, Canadian workers, Canadian stores, and it's going to be reinvested back in the community.
In the end, Foran is hoping more people checking out what their community has to offer can turn this anxiety-filled time into an opportunity.
If we're spending all our time on being critical of the shadow of that relative that we've been living under for all these decades, we're just giving them our energy. And let's take that energy back and use it in a positive way in our own country to become everything we can be.
Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Port Coquitlam, BC.
Use that energy in a positive way. That is our newscast. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Sandy and Omar will be here tomorrow, and I'll see you again on Friday. Good night.